So
help me bridge that.
So while at Hood, I applied for West Point and was accepted, and so I ended up going to West Point. But I didn't go straight to West Point. I had to go to West Point Prep School there in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. I completed that program, went to West Point, and then me and West Point didn't get along. By this time, I was 20 and a half. You can only be 20, you had to be younger than 21 to attend. So, I mean, I was at that cusp of being too old even to attend. I had served 4.5 years in the military. I was actually about to be promotable to sergeant before I went to West Point. So I had established in what I'd call, that was probably my biggest growth in life, was I really had become an adult. I'd shooken off all the bad things I'd been doing. I started taking responsibility for myself and others. So I'd really grown into a very independent individual. And then I go to West Point and they treat me like a like a knucklehead. They use the term plebe there, and it didn't fit. Ultimately, the other piece I realized was by this time I knew there were so many other ways to get a commission, to become an officer in the military. And so after, maybe 4 weeks into Beast Week or into Beast, I decided to withdraw from West Point. And that's when I came back to Stephenville and instantly just came back here and got into the ROTC program.
Oh, so that was fairly early.
It was.
Like, did you hook up with any other prior service people while at West Point, or were you sort of one of the only ones that you
So, West Point Prep, a lot of us were prior enlisted, because that's typically the route they'll end up taking, the prior enlisted. They want to get you back in the academics. But once I actually got to my little squad and platoon at West Point, I was one of only a few in my company. Heck, I was older than the company commander, who was a senior. And so that was a really tough deal. And actually, I enjoyed some of my leadership, but we had a little bumps in the road where, a ruck march was nothing to me. And we were doing ruck marches, and I knew one of the fellow cadets had fell back quite a ways. And I asked my leadership, hey, can I go back and help her? Just give her a little motivation, get her back up here with us. And they let me go back, which was not a unique thing. As a plebe, they let me do that because they knew my experience. And so I did. I went back, and the leadership behind started chewing me out. And I'm like, I can run you into the ground. I'm back here doing what soldiers are supposed to be doing. So little things like that. And I'm not mad at that individual. They're there learning. It was probably some individual has had no time in the military, and all they've seen is military through West Point's eyes. And they thought they were doing the right thing at that time. However, they didn't know their soldier. They didn't know me. So little things like that kept poking their heads up. And so ultimately, I just decided I'd rather get my commission elsewhere. And it worked out. As my wife likes to remind me, everything happens for a reason. Had I stayed at West Point, I'd have never met her. I wouldn't have the life I have now. So coming back here to Tarleton's ROTC, I was allowed a lot more of that maneuverability because I was prior enlisted. And so I ended up thriving here, even though it took me 2 times through the ROTC program here at Tarleton. But each time I was allowed to thrive because of my experience prior to being in ROTC.